Former president and allegedly current presidential candidate Donald Trump once again lost his mind in a series of unhinged social media posts as the district attorney investigating his attempt to overturn the election results in Georgia revealed in court that she's close to announcing decisions regarding possible indictments in the case and even suggested that there could be more than one defendant. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. As you may recall, in the days leading up to the coup attempt on January 6, Trump tried to pressure Georgia's Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to manipulate the vote tally in Georgia and overturn Joe Biden's victory. In particular, there was that infamous line where Trump just confessed and told them what he was asking for. He wanted them to magically find enough votes for him to win.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Trump has the same energy attempting a coup as someone who's been on the phone with Verizon customer service for an hour. Look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find my Paramount Plus. Maybe Trump's pause was because he didn't want to sound suspicious, asking for the exact amount of votes he needed to win. He was trying to sound like it was an arbitrary number. He pulled out of thin air.
Look, this isn't even about winning or losing for me. It's about getting the count right. And if we do that and Joe Biden is still the winner, I'll be the first to congratulate him. So I'll just come up with a number off the top of my head. 11,780.
That's, of course, the most infamous line from the phone call, but the parts that remain truly astounding to me are all the deranged conspiracy theories Trump unfurled over the course of an hour-long rant, including stuff he admitted during the call may not be true. Here are a few highlights in case you managed to block all of this from your memory and move on with your life, in which case, congrats.
Ballots were dropped in massive numbers, and we're trying to get to those numbers, and we will have them. They weren't in an official voter box. They were in what looked to be suitcases or trunks, suitcases, but they weren't in voter boxes. The minimum number it could be, because we watched it and they watched it certified in slow motion, instant replay, if you can believe it, but had slow motion and it was magnified many times over. And the minimum it was 18,000 ballots, all for Biden. The other thing, dead people. So dead people voted. And I think the number is in the close to 5,000 people. And they went to obituaries. They went to all sorts of methods to come up with an accurate number. And a minimum is close to about 5,000 voters.
Oof, it makes me feel bad for Raffensperger. He must have had that same feeling I get when I take an Uber to the airport and within 2 minutes, the driver locks eyes with me in his rearview mirror and says, "So you ever listen to Alex Jones?" There's so much to unpack here, starting with Trump's insistence that dead people are voting. Now, of course, what he means is people use dead people's names to fraudulently vote, which also didn't happen, but he's too scatterbrained to explain it that way. So it just sounds like he thinks an army of zombie Biden voters cost him the election. Trump then went on to say this.
Then the other thing they said is in Fulton County and other areas, and this may or may not be true, this just came up this morning, that they are burning their ballots, and that just came to us as a report today. And, it's a very sad situation.
Anytime you say the words, "this may or may not be true," and those words are immediately followed by, "they're burning ballots," it's definitely not true. I mean, most of Trump's conspiracy theories I can at least trace back to some tiny kernel of truth that his diseased mind then twists into some elaborate fantasy. But this one, I honestly have no clue where he got it from. And interestingly, we never heard about it again. I mean, burning ballots, did he go to a magic show and think it was a polling place?
You know, they're burning the ballots and then the ballots disappear. They go poof, gone, or so it seems. But then they pull the ballot out of a hat and you think, it can't be the same ballot. But then they say, is this your ballot? And sure enough, it is. It is your ballot. And then they take out a big suitcase and they stuff a lady into it and they chop her in half. It's very sad. They chop her in half, and then she gets to vote twice, once for the head and once for the legs. Because now she's legally two people who both vote for Joe Biden, which is very suspicious. Very suspicious and very sad. But also, can we go back to this?
We watched it, and they watched it certified in slow motion, instant replay, if you can believe it.
No, I can't believe that. Slow motion instant replay is such an old person way of saying it. Sounds like the name of a segment on America's Funniest Home Videos. Now let's check out the slow motion instant replay of Dad taking a soccer ball in the groin and, oh, that's gotta hurt. Now, in all fairness, that's not the face Rudy makes when he's hitting the balls. That's the face he makes every time he remembers that by being Donald Trump's attorney, he's, to use the legal term, getting hit in the balls every day. For example, the district attorney in Fulton County, Fani Willis, has been investigating this phone call and the pressure campaign around it to the point where she subpoenaed, among others, Senator Lindsey Graham, former Trump campaign counsel Jenna Ellis, and Rudy Giuliani. In fact, Giuliani was informed last year that he's a target of the investigation, and he was also called to testify before the grand jury in August.
President Trump's former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, faced a grilling for 6 hours before a grand jury in Atlanta yesterday. Giuliani testifying as a target of the criminal probe looking into possible 2020 election interference there.
We do know that it very likely centered around statements that Giuliani made to Georgia lawmakers back in 2020, just on the heels of the presidential election, where he came forth and made a number of false claims and really conspiracy theories about the election here in Georgia.
What kind of charges potentially would that mean?
You know, the DA here in Fulton County has indicated that this could lead to possible charges ranging from racketeering to possible conspiracy charges.
Racketeering makes sense. Conspiracy does too, but it might be a harder sell to a jury because Rudy is so bad at conspiracy. He literally holds up incriminating texts on TV. He meets with shady characters in cigar bars and then takes pictures. Remember, fellas, we never had this conversation. Now, how about a quick picture so we never forget it? Also, my sympathies to the grand jury members who had to sit there and listen to Rudy Giuliani for 6 hours. And that probably feels like 12 hours to Rudy because, as we discovered during a recent disciplinary hearing conducted via Zoom, he sometimes wears 2 watches by accident.
So I'm at a good place to stop, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
You know I have 2 watches on.
I mean, if I'm Rudy's attorney, that's my entire defense. I'll just let the prosecution go for weeks on end, building a case that my client committed conspiracy. When it's my turn, I'd stand up, face the jury, and say, he didn't know he had 2 watches on. And the defense arrests. So that's where the investigation stood until yesterday when Willis appeared in court for a hearing on whether to make the grand jury's report public. Willis asked the judge to keep the report private for now, and she did so for a tantalizing reason. She said she was about to announce decisions about indictments in the case regarding multiple potential defendants.
New tonight, the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, which includes much of Atlanta, says her decision on charges in the probe of former President Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election is imminent.
Fulton County DA Fani Willis has asked the judge to keep the report under seal, citing concerns for, quote, future defendants.
We think for future defendants to be treated fairly, it's not appropriate at this time to have this report released. We are asking that the report not be released because you having seen that report, decisions are imminent.
Now, I gave up a long time ago predicting whether Trump will ever be indicted since he seems to wriggle his way out of every jam he's ever been in, which is surprising given that he has the flexibility of a Mr. Potato Head that got dropped in the toilet. I mean, look at him. Why is he only capable of bending at the waist like that? He looks like one of those drinking birds. But I will say, if there are going to be any indictments in this case at all, you would assume that one of them would be the guy who made the phone call, unless, of course, Trump made a plea deal and turned on Rudy.
It was Rudy's idea. We were having a sleepover, and he said, let's do some prank calls. And I said, I don't know, Rudy, we might get in trouble. And he said, it'll be hilarious. Let's call Georgia and tell them dead people are voting. He did all the time. I just did background boos. I did spooky noises.
Of course, Trump didn't make a plea deal. In fact, the case sent him into a tailspin and prompted him to go nuts on his fake Twitter ripoff Truth Social. Trump wrote, among other things, with many people on the line on what was a perfect call protesting the rigged Georgia election, which I have a clear right to do, and in fact an obligation to do since I made the call as president. How come not one person said while on the call that I acted inappropriately or made a statement of protest at what I said and then slammed down the phone? Not one. even with so many opposing people, lawyers, and others on the line. No admonishment at all. We nicely agreed to speak again. That was the call to Georgia. It was perfect. I love that his argument is, if I was so crazy, how come they didn't hang up on me? Because you were the president, dude. I know it's crazy, but it fully happened. But just because you were president doesn't mean you were all of a sudden making sense. You were just too important to hang up on. If people could hang up on the president, don't you think Fox and Friends would have done that during one of your rambling hour-long phone calls instead of staring at you dead-eyed like tourists watching two rats hump on the subway? Also, if they had hung up on you, I'm pretty sure you would have made a big deal about that too. You don't strike me as the type of guy who hears a sudden dial tone and looks inward. Oh dear, they've hung up on me. I hope I didn't say anything to offend. Also, they did tell you multiple times on the call that you were wrong. In fact, my favorite example of that was when Trump was asked about some video he claimed to have seen supposedly showing that Biden ballots were scanned more than once, which prompted Raffensperger to say he would send Trump a link to the real video debunking Trump's claim.
We don't agree that you have one. Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong. We brought in WSB TV and we let them see the full run of tape.
Why did they put the votes in 3 times? You know, they put them in 3 times.
Mr. President, they did not put that. We did an audit of that, and we proved conclusively that they were not scanned 3 times. Mr. President, we'll send you the link from WSB that doesn't.
I don't care about a link. I don't need it. I have a much better link.
I have a much better link is such a snotty little thing to say, while also fundamentally misunderstanding the technology of what a link is. Trump is not technologically proficient. Do you want the Wi-Fi password?
No, I've got my own Wi-Fi, got my own links. Got my own Wi-Fi, got a couple of loose URLs. We know what that stands for. You are losers. Not me, I'm not a loser. I got the good links.
We obviously don't know what will happen in this case, but it's clear from the public evidence alone that Trump tried to commit election interference and coerce a public official into manipulating votes. And he got help from a bunch of his closest cronies, including Rudy. Decisions about indictments could come any day now, although they could happen at different times for different people. So if you're keeping track of both Trump and Rudy, you might need...
Watches.
This has been A Closer Look.